What's up, everyone? This is part 2 of my response to Rationality Rules. He's claimed that he's debunked the argument for miracles. Now, since this is part 2, I highly encourage you to watch part 1. The link to the full playlist is in the description if you haven't seen part 1 already. That's going to cover a lot of ground, such as what is a miracle? Does a miracle support theism? And things like that. But for now, let's get it going.
With this acknowledged, the second and perhaps most obvious flaw with miracles is that they either commit an argument from ignorance or a personal incredulity fallacy. To illustrate this, consider the following. Throughout history there have been numerous accounts of flightless animals raining from the sky, and needless to say, on just about every occasion, someone somewhere has asserted that a miracle has occurred, because there's no other explanation. Now, of course, it's fair to say that flightless animals don't just fall from the sky, but one can't simply assert that a miracle has occurred simply because there's no other explanation. That would be, and is, an outrageous argument from ignorance. It is, in essence, we don't know, therefore God. Anyhow, as it turns out, we now actually do have an adequate explanation, which, by the way, perfectly demonstrates why arguments from ignorance are flawed. This explanation is, quite simply, a tornado that's formed over a body of water, otherwise known as a waterspout, that's then hurled water and aquatic animals over land. It's a bizarre phenomenon, incredible even, but it's not a miracle because it doesn't violate the laws of nature. Yet, despite the fact that we now know exactly how flightless animals can rain from the sky, many people still assert that the only explanation is divine intervention, because they either don't personally know about waterspouts or they don't understand them, which, as you may or may not know, isn't an argument from ignorance, but rather it's a personal incredulity fallacy.
I just want to start off by saying that I agree with Stephen that you just can't assert that a miracle has occurred just because there's no natural explanation for the phenomena. Most of the time, weird things happen and there is a natural explanation. The problem, though, with this assertion is that it seems like to me, Stephen believes that you cannot believe something is true unless it is proven to be true. This type of skepticism is just not a solid basis for knowledge. For example, most people believe that George Washington was a historical figure. But if we go by the idea that you can't believe something unless it's proven to be true, we need to doubt the existence of someone named George Washington. This is because, by this way of thinking, sure, we have historical documents claimed to be written by someone named George Washington, but that doesn't mean that George Washington actually wrote those documents. Sure, we have countless textbooks that talk about George Washington leading the Americans in the American Revolution, but that could be anyone, or it could just be a made-up conspiracy to put this guy named George Washington in the textbooks. You can't prove that he led the U.S. Army. Sure, there's a body underneath a tombstone saying George Washington, but that doesn't mean that it is someone named George Washington. That could be anyone's body, or it could just be some sort of error. Stephen also appeals to an argument from ignorance when someone appeals to an odd event as a miracle because you cannot provide a natural explanation for that event. Now, I do agree that if you just say, hey, this thing happened, and there's no evidence that shows that there's a natural explanation, therefore it's a miracle. I agree, that would be an argument from ignorance, but most of the real serious arguments for miracles, that's just not what they're saying. It's also ironic because the opposite form of an argument from ignorance is when you say that a proposition is false because you cannot prove that it is true. And then it seems like that's exactly what Stephen is doing when he asserts that an event must be proven to be believed.
And this brings us comfortably to a necessary question that is extremely effective at exposing a third fallacy that ravishes miraculous assertions. This question is, how exactly can we distinguish a miracle from an unlikely natural occurrence that we are yet to comprehend? It's a very simple question, but it's a brilliant one, if I do say so myself.
Now, Stephen asks a good question here, but it's a question with an answer. I think there's a couple of things that can be done to answer this question. First, if the person claiming a miracle has occurred has an adequate explanation, there should also be a burden of proof on the skeptic to give at least a reason to doubt this person's explanation. To the atheists out there, if you want to make any headway with a theist in an actual conversation, you are going to have to give him a reason to doubt his miracle claim. Second, to answer Stephen's original question about how we should distinguish a miracle from an unlikely natural occurrence, I just want to say that the idea that since most explanations in the past have had natural explanations, therefore explanations which do not have an explanation now will be a natural explanation is, as Inspiring Philosophy notes, a future humans of the gaps fallacy. Now, I know I just said the word explanation a lot, and you're probably like, what is this guy talking about? But to further clarify, when someone says, I don't know why you believe a miracle happened, but because in the past, explanations have always been natural, therefore yours will also have a natural explanation, that is a faith-based position. If you would agree with that claim, you have faith in the same way that Christians have faith in Jesus Christ, that naturalism provides all of the answers. That is an assertion that cannot be proven. And if you only believe things that can be proven, you shouldn't even believe that assertion in the first place. You can't prove the claim, quote, since events in the past had natural explanations, events in the future that can't be explained now will have natural explanations as well, end quote. The argument from miracles isn't about putting God into explanations when we don't know. Serious arguments from miracles are inferences to the best explanation. If you believe that the best explanation isn't a miracle, you need to provide evidence that at least attempts to explain the data.
Because it forces the proponent to bear their burden of proof, rather than allowing them to shift it to you by appealing to ignorance. And if they can't, and instead they either attempt to shift the burden of proof to you, or they simply appeal to ignorance, then guess what? Their assertion is unsubstantiated, and therefore their argument is too. Meaning that it's game over. No ifs, no buts, it's over.
I agree with a lot of what Stephen has to say here in this final clip. If you want to claim that a miracle has occurred, you do have a burden of proof to provide some evidence, whether it's eyewitness testimony or medical data or some sort of evidence. But the problem is, when theists provide this evidence, the atheists will just counter by saying either A, that's not evidence, or B, there will be a natural explanation for your phenomena. That's a faith-based position, and I don't have enough faith to believe that naturalism provides answers to all of the countless reported miracles. So thanks for listening, guys. I'm Zach. This is Adherent Apologetics. I can say that through 2 parts, the argument for miracles is nowhere close to being debunked. I'll see you next time.